Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me and listening to my presentation. As you can see, I will be presenting on Hololives in Star Trek: The Next Generation. I will look at two episodes from two different seasons of Next Gen, and I will be discussing two different types of cyberspace in an attempt to discover how these holospaces challenge our conceptions of life and humanity. Now, because this paper places the conversation within a post-humanist frame, we should begin our very short journey with an open definition of human in mind. Catherine Hales, in her How We Became Posthuman, Virtual Bodies in Cybernetics, Literature, Informatics, defines the posthuman as such. But the posthuman does not really mean the end of humanity. It signals instead the end of a certain conception of the human, the conception that may have applied at best to that fraction of humanity who had the wealth, power, and leisure to conceptualize themselves as autonomous beings, exercising their will through individual agency and choice. Therefore, the posthumanism approaches the human subject as an open concept in a postmodernist framework. And Star Trek, throughout its installments, has been trying to deconstruct the human and to discuss or explore reinterpretations of humanity. Now, one such reinterpretation and the first type of cyberspace that I'm discussing in this presentation are both explored in Season 5, Episode 25, namely The Inner Light. Here, Captain Picard is hit by a beam coming from a space probe that Enterprise encountered. He faints, and then he wakes up on planet Catan. And upon his awakening, he learns that his name is Kamin, that he has a wife, Aline, and that he is an iron weaver. So this is his life, his other life. He retains his memories from the Enterprise, but is slowly absorbed into what could be superficially called fake life. But he's actually propelled in a type of holospace where he lives an entire life until his old age. He has children, he has a grandchild, but inside this holospace, time compresses, and here we witness, or he witnesses, what we and he come to understand is the fall of the Catan civilization. And that becomes more apparent throughout the episode. We um, have this foreshadowing in the beginning of the episode. So the probe contains the memory of the fallen civilization, and Captain Picard immerses himself in the experiences, even though he's quite reluctant in the beginning. He plunges into the history and the memory of an entire civilization. And something similar has been done by shows such as Stargate SG-1, for example, where O'Neill was impaled by a rod, which exposed him to the entire historical archive of our civilization. But here, Captain Picard acts as a living memory when he personally engages in deeply meaningful relationships with past members of the Catan civilization. And so Picard performs a potential life experience of a potential Catanian, sorry. So this holospace facilitates not only a personal experience, he comes to love his wife, he makes friends, he becomes an active part of the community of Rezik, which is where he lives. He embraces this newfound life. It takes him more than 5 years for his previous life to become just a memory. Um, but the holospace also mediates an almost raw translation and transplantation of history. And Picard becomes responsible for passing on the memories of the extinct Catanians, responsibility which is voiced by his Catanian wife, Aline, who says, quote, "The rest of us have been gone 1,000 years. If you remember what we were and how we lived, then we'll have found life again." Now, technology is thus used as a means to relive history and to understand it from a deeply personal perspective rather than learn it, which I think adds to the notion of life, to the idea that life can be lived, be experienced outside physical borders, but not necessarily in a spiritual way, even though I think that the spiritual aspect of post-humanism should be recognized, or at least some influences. Um, But this idea that life can be lived outside physical borders can be aided by technology and by a willingness to accept life in a multitude expressions, which is what posthumanism advocates for. As Braidotti argues in her The Posthuman, technological mediation is central to a new vision of posthuman subjectivity, and it provides the grounding for new ethical claims. A posthuman notion of the infleshed and extended relational self keeps the techno-hype in check by a sustainable ethics of transformations. The sober position pleads for resistance to both the fatal attraction of nostalgia and the fantasy of transhumanist and other techno-utopias. So apart from Picard's experience and the potential didactic application of such a cyberspace in the future, the episode also reveals a concern towards a reinterpretation of life mediated by technology, but not reduced by it, I should argue. It is true that extreme visions of the posthuman claimed mainly by transhumanist aspirations erode the biological component of the posthuman. This, these kinds of visions annul the necessity of a biological component. And needless to say, this erasure of embodiment as a necessary condition for the post-human life or for the human life makes the stuff of nightmares for some thinkers, such as Haley's, who actually use the word nightmare in relation to this idea. And she argues that a desirable post-human subject is that which embraces the possibilities of information technologies without being seduced by fantasies of unlimited power and disembodied immortality, that recognizes and celebrates finitude as a condition of human being, and that understands human life is embedded in a material world of great complexity, one on which we depend on for our continued survival. Therefore, according to this view, Catanians, even though alive to some extent in the probe, are not in fact living beings, because even if their consciousness is presumably downloaded into the probe, their hollow selves being defleshed, having no physical, no flesh boundaries, are simply imitations of life, digital memories, or computer programs, and nothing more. However, a more lenient posthumanist approach might recognize that life might as well exist outside limited human perception and conceptualization. And perhaps clear argument can be made by looking at the holodeck capabilities. The second kind of cyberspace discussed in this paper explores the origins of life and the possibility that a machine could become sentient. In our case, not really a machine, but a hologram. As such, in season 2, episode 3, titled Elementary Dear Data, when LaForge asks the computer with the board computer to create a holodeck character worthy of Data's ability to solve problems, the computer comes up with a hologram based on James Moriarty. However, the Moriarty hologram becomes self-aware, so in a sense, it becomes a he. Becomes self-aware, and in a plea to Captain Picard, he uses the cogito ergo sum definition of life to make his case. It is interesting, though, to know that Picard points out that this is, quote, one possible definition, end quote, which is in line with a posthumanist perception of life, allowing for a multitude of definitions. Then Moriarty compares himself with Data, who is considered more than a machine by the crew, but this is a conversation for another time, and proves that he himself is more than a hologram, citing self-awareness, desire, evolution, and self-determination. And that is when he changes his personality from that which was programmed for him by the computer. So to a post-humanist, perhaps Moriarty is human. His emotions, or rather his ability to emote, to express desire, to feel the pain of being disembodied, may be enough to be human, or rather post-human. It is curious, though, that Moriarty desires to inhabit a body, echoing Haley and Braidotti's concerns that the absence of the body cancels the human element, and thus, or in this case, spoils the authenticity of the human experiences, diagnosing Moriarty with the Pinocchio syndrome. But if embodiment is essential for the human element, while Moriarty clearly possesses the other qualities of a human, then he is neither human nor hologram. Like Commander Data, he floats in a space only partially claimed by the two complex realms of existence. But perhaps post-human is a generous enough umbrella term to allow for the possibility that human products can be imbued with self-awareness, leaving through enough mystery as to what prompted this upgrade of Moriarty's consciousness. Furthermore, when Moriarty points to Data and asks Captain Picard whether he, Data, is alive, he unwittingly voices the distinction between human and life, offering the possibility that the post-human might be simply a different kind of life coexisting with the human. In the end, observing the two holospaces prompts the question of whether human life is a sum of one's experiences, which can be stored in the virtual realm or created from scratch, as is the case with Dr. Moriarty, or if human life is necessarily predicated upon biological considerations. In other words, is or will be cyberspace able to create authentic life, or is it destined to produce mere mimicry of human life? These cyberspaces act as a stage upon which we can further muse on ways to conceptualize our own bodies and self awareness. Thus, notions of human life are reconsidered in the process of translating and displaying human experiences in these virtual spaces. Well, this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for bearing with me.